Donald Trump is now on his last full day of his presidency. And of course, he's expected to pardon dozens of his friends and political allies. Now, as we speak about this right now, announcements regarding these pardons have not been made yet. But there have been some hints in regard to who Donald Trump is willing to pardon and who he has no interest in pardoning. So just to remind you all, he's already pardoned, individuals, friends of his who were implicated in the Russia investigation, with the exception of his former personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, corrupt Republican lawmakers such as Duncan Hunter, Chris Collins, and Steve Stockman. And of course, how can we forget the Blackwater security contractors who purposefully murdered civilians. But now some of the upcoming pardons can include, honestly, some people that I did not expect. As The Hill reports, the rapper Lil Wayne, who has pleaded guilty to possession of an illegal firearm, and former New York Assembly Speaker Sheldon Silver, who was found guilty on public corruption charges and is imprisoned in New York. So those are reportedly among the first wave of pardons Trump will issue. I will note, this is the last day he can do it, and it's getting pretty late in the day. There's also a lot of pressure for him to pardon Julian Assange, who of course is currently facing attempts by the United States to extradite him to the country to face charges for leaking classified information, something that we've disagreed with. Hopefully Trump does issue a pardon for Julian Assange in that case, because the very specific thing they're targeting him for should be protected, especially considering it was information that was related to our, the wars we engaged in abroad, some of the war crimes that our military was engaging in at the time, and it was important for the American people to know about it. And to persecute Julian Assange for that specific reason is wrong. But again, so far we haven't heard anything from Trump in regard to pardoning Julian Assange. And Trump has liberally, as we know, granted pardons to political allies, raising questions about whether he will preemptively pardon his personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, or his former advisor, Steve Bannon, who is charged with fraud over his association with a group that was raising money to build a wall along the southern border. So Ryan, I want to bring you in and kind of get your thoughts about the names that have been floated. It is pretty late in the day. Do you think that these pardons are going to be announced later tonight?
Trump loves to hold everything until the very last minute. It's part of his showman reality TV style. So theoretically, he could wait until 11:59 a.m. tomorrow Eastern time before he actually released them, and they would still be legal pardons. The Sheldon Silver one is interesting. I mean, this is a pretty wildly corrupt New York Democrat who has had quite the odyssey of going through prosecutions, mistrials, guilty verdicts, appeals, in and out of prison. To have this end with a Trump pardon is almost kind of like a perfect ending in a lot of ways. And I would love to read the story someday about how this came about. Like who does Sheldon Silver know? Does Sheldon Silver, I'm sure, actually knows Donald Trump quite well, because Sheldon Silver's a man. He was a state senator from Manhattan, and so he clearly has known Trump for a very long time. How did he get to him for this pardon? Weird. Lil Wayne, okay, pardon, okay. But the question of Assange, people around Assange at this point are quite pessimistic about the possibility of a last minute pardon for him. And I think a lot of this turned on the last week. And also the storming of the Capitol. And I think this redounded very poorly for Assange in this sense that Trump is never going to take a risk for somebody else. That's just not who he is. If you want Trump to do something for you, you have to convince him that his interests align with your interests, that doing that thing is going to help you, but more importantly, it's going to help Trump. And so the argument that everybody was making to him was like, look, all of your enemies hate Julian Assange. all the entire deep state, the Bushes, the Cheneys, all the Democrats, Hillary, everybody hates Julian Assange. So if you pardon him, you will anger all of these enemies of yours, and you will show your supporters that you're not afraid to take on this deep state, the establishments of both parties, and that'll help you in either pretending to run a 2024 campaign or actually running a 2024 campaign. That was a reasonable argument, and it was the kind of thing that Trump could understand, and that's why there was so much optimism that he might do it. But once this attack on the Capitol happened, and it became clear to Trump that he was now in jeopardy of being impeached, which happened, in jeopardy of being convicted of impeachment, which very well might happen, could be disqualified from running for future office, and could be open to criminal charges for all manner of things as his power drains. Now all of a sudden he's much less inclined to tick off those people who now hold his fate in his hands. So now Assange's supporters are relying on the courage of Donald Trump, and that's never a position that you want to be in.
No, that's never a good idea. But I do love that you mentioned, the possibility of Trump being persuaded to avoid certain pardons because he's looking to the future. When I think of someone like Donald Trump, I don't really think of someone who's thinking ahead and planning ahead. But you're right in mentioning how self-interested he is. So if he does get convicted in the Senate based on the impeachment charges that the House has agreed to, well, he can't run again in 2024. And so he might be thinking about that. And we'll see if that persuades him in a direction that Julian Assange's supporters are hoping to avoid. But you also mentioned something that I think is really interesting, that he will never take risks for anyone else. However, others have taken tremendous risks on his behalf, namely Republican lawmakers who decided to go along with this narrative of widespread voter fraud, a narrative that consists of unfounded claims. There's no evidence of widespread voter fraud, but nonetheless, these Republican lawmakers went along with it.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.